folks. I'm Pastor Steve Herring, and this is part 4 of a 4-part series on the patterns that we encounter, especially with regard to managing the stress in our lives. Basically, what we have covered up to this point is just to help you gain some sense of perspective on whatever the trouble is that is bothering you as you go through all the ups and downs, all the positives and negatives, all the darkness and the light, all the patterns that affect your life in this world. The last section we looked at the genetic code that covers our bodies and programs our bodies. That genetic code makes us susceptible to certain diseases, gives us certain chronic conditions that we have to cope with throughout our lives, gives us strengths that hand us the abilities to go through the challenges that the weaknesses bring our way. And that's what we covered in part 3. Now, part 4, talks about we talk about the decisions that we make and the faith that we possess. When I wrote the essay, 4 Visions of the Good Life, I broke down 4 basic categories of human experience. The 4 basic categories are: 1, the world of dynamic chaos, the larger world in which we live. 2, the inner world of our physical body, the genetic code that programs these bodies and gives them the strengths and the weaknesses that they possess. Number 3 are the decisions that we make. You see, your life, my life, our lives are governed in an enormous extent by the decisions that we make. What do we repeat to our children continuously? Constantly, we tell our children, make good decisions. Learn to make good decisions, because if you make bad decisions, you're gonna face bad consequences as a result of the bad decisions that you make. So you have to make good decisions. But the amazing truth of any day that we live is that the conditions of that day are largely governed by a very wide variety of decisions that we make. It is now, about 6:30, 6:45? What time is it?
6:55.
6:55. We're almost at 7 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday, because I made a series of decisions that led me to come here to Pine Tops, which is part of my normal schedule, but I came later as opposed to earlier. It's nearly 7 o'clock in the evening, and we're here in the parlor at Pine Tops doing this discussion. Amazingly, how these decisions govern every aspect of our living. I'll tell you a little story here about my Aunt Margaret. Some years ago, my Aunt Margaret came up to visit us, and she was traveling somewhere. I have to ask her to reiterate the specifics of this decision. She was traveling, and she flew into an airport, and she rented a car. And she signed all the papers, did all the stuff you have to do, paid all the money, did what you have to do to rent this car, and they showed her where the car was and gave her the keys, and she went and unlocked the car, and she got in the car and got ready to go, and right before she got ready to go, she said, "Wait a minute, I'm not ready to go." She made a decision. "I'm not going to go now, I'm going to wait." She said, "Maybe something's wrong with this car." She got out of the car and she walked around it and she looked at it. And then she got back in the car. And then she left. Headed out of the rental car lot, headed up onto the freeway, got onto the freeway, and came upon the most horrific automobile accident that she had ever seen. A horrible accident had just occurred. Had she not paused, when she paused, she would have been in the accident. Wow. In other words, the decision to go then as opposed to then governed the course of her life at that point. And so it is with us that the decisions we make, often not just the big decisions. One of the little stumbling blocks that we run into is that we tend to think of life as just, the big decisions, like am I going to work here or am I going to work there? Am I going to pick this career or am I going to pick that career? Am I going to marry this person or am I going to marry that person? The really big decisions that we end up making. Well, okay, the little decisions are also incredibly effective in governing the nature of the lives that we live. And so decision making is a continual process. And what we really need as we make these decisions is faith. We need to believe that the decisions we make are for the best. Now, the best way to understand decision making is I use the pattern of the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus celebrated the Last Supper with his disciples. And then after the Last Supper, they went out to the garden, and he bade his disciples to stay awake and watch. And they went and fell asleep. Jesus went and had a prayer privately. And in that prayer, he said to God, if it is possible to take this cup away from me, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. Thy will be done. Not my will, thy will be done. That was a surrendering of his decision. You see, Jesus could have just run away. Right in that moment. Could have just left his disciples sleeping right where they were sleeping and just gotten the heck out of there. Just gotten out of there. Run to Emmaus. And then right on up back to Galilee. Could have just left that situation right then. He didn't need to stay there where they were coming to arrest him. But he surrendered his will to God's will. Now, in decision making ultimately is all about faith. Faith is where we believe that we're doing the right thing, where we believe that God will bless the decisions that we make, where we believe that even if we make a mistake, that mistake will be blessed by God. See, that's the faith element of the decisions that we make. And so the way I like to see and frame any problem or set of problems or group of problems that we might encounter, whether it's a personal illness, whether it's an illness in a person we love, whether it is a loss that we have encountered or a crisis that we may find ourselves in of some kind, or a tremendous storm that's come and changed the course of our lives, or whatever it may be, that I see a way of putting the patterns together to minimize the stress and maximize the joy. That's why I call the essay 4 Visions of the Good Life. 4 visions. The first vision is a vision of the material world as a whole. A world that is governed and shaped continuously by these amazing fractal patterns of dynamic chaos. I see these patterns everywhere as things sort themselves into these patterns. The world changes, and as the world changes, it changes according to these dynamic fractal patterns. Then inside of ourselves, we have really a microcosm of the same dynamic fractal patterns, a program that governs our physical existence, a program determined by our genomic code that will give us certain weaknesses and certain strengths, certain diseases that we are going to be prone to, and others that we will never get at all. That we will follow this genomic pattern that is provided for us by the DNA of our mother and our father. And then we make decisions. I believe that understanding decisions, even very little decisions, as having really big possible consequences. Little things can turn into big things. That's one of the dynamic patterns of the world. That a butterfly can flap its wings and make a little disturbance in the air, and that disturbance in the air can affect a whole weather pattern. That's called the butterfly effect. And it's been well established, very well documented and understood. So small decisions follow the same basic chaotic patterns, that what we need to do is understand the decisions that we make and understand that even very small decisions can have absolutely tremendous consequences. And then the 4th vision of the good life is the vision of faith. So the first vision is the world of dynamic chaos. The second vision is the vision of the internal composite making up of our bodies. The third vision is the vision of decision making. The 4th vision is the vision of faith. And faith, you see, is where it all comes together, because the world itself will come and it will go. It's all temporary. I'm temporary. You are temporary. This room is temporary. Everything is. But the Word of God, the Logos, the Word by which God founded and established this entire world, that Word will last forever. That Word is eternal. And so that gives me the faith that I can understand and look for the meaning at the center of all the experiences that I have. You can look for the meaning at the center of all the experiences that you have. Well, if you want to study this in somewhat more detail, just let me know, and we're going to put this in the YouTube computer thing that you get that tells you what to how to log in. The description. 4 Visions of the Good Life. It's a decent little essay that I wrote some years ago. and I'm very happy to discuss this with you at any point. Now, as you follow these Bible studies and so forth, remember you can call me anytime. 252-883-7541. You can email me, pastorsteve969@gmail.com. And I am here to help you through whatever dynamic chaos life may bring your way. So please feel free to be in touch. Thank you for watching, and that concludes part 4 of our 4-part series.